Hey guys, today we're prepping and pouring a 50 by 30 concrete slab. It's 6 inches thick, but what's different about it, something you might find kind of interesting, is we're pouring it on top of an ICF foundation. So insulated concrete forms. Those forms are about, I think they're 16 inches tall. There's 2 rows of them here. There they go. That's what they look like right there. Plus there's a footing under it, just like that. So the footing's done first, then the forms are set on top of the footing, and then the forms are poured with concrete, and then you come in, you backfill both sides, inside and out, and then we were hired to come in and do the slab prep like we're doing right here today, and then pour the floor too. Now what this yellow stuff is, this is 15 mil vapor barrier. It's plastic, it's called Stego wrap. It's 15 mils thick, so this is a pretty thick Stego vapor barrier. And then the red stuff is, vapor tape that we use to tape everything together to get everything nice and tight. So the guy doesn't have to worry about moisture coming up through his floor later on. There's 3 floor drains in this. So the whole slab, the 50 by 30, everything will be pitched into a drain. There'll be a high spot in between the drains. So there'll be like different bays to each drain if the guy wants. There'll be a garage door here on the front, and then there'll be a garage door in the back. You can be able to drive right through this. And we were hired, basically I just gave him a price to do the prep, set the forms, do the vapor barrier, do the wire, and then come in, pour, finish, and saw the slab. Those are 5 foot by 10 foot sheets of light gauge wire, which is the most basic type of wire used for residential stuff. That's the easiest way to lay wire mesh nowadays, is in those sheets. And then you can tie those together if you want to keep them nice and tight. We'll do 50-50. Sometimes we'll tie them all together. Sometimes we'll just lay them down nice and neat, and then just make sure when we pour the concrete, they stay in place, and we pull it up into the concrete. And then for the forms, what we did was, he wanted a certain dimension for this building, so we set the forms right on top of the ICFs here. As you can see, we screwed a 2x down the face of them, and then we shimmed in about 1.5 inches, and then screwed the form to that, and that's right where he wanted the slab edges to come. Now we could have, if he wanted them even with the outside of the forms, we could have just used like a 2x12 and screwed right through the 2x12 into the ICF forms. But for whatever reason, he wanted it right here, so this is where we put it. This is where we squared them, and then we set them to grade using the self-leveling laser that we always use. You'll see that. You should be able to see that in the pour, because we always use that when we pour too, just to check everything. So here's pour day. We got 3 trucks coming. We got about 30-ish yards coming here. We're starting out. We got a 3,500 PSI concrete, I believe. A lot of our concrete floors are with 3,500 PSI. Then sometimes we'll use a 4,000 PSI if the customer asks for a little bit stronger concrete. Luke, Darren, and I are just pulling it around. We're yanking up the wires. We go, all 3 of us, making sure concrete gets underneath the wire. I know one myth, a lot of guys think that, you pull that wire up and then you go walk on it, and then the wire goes right back down on top of the plastic like it is now. And that's just not true. That concrete's got all kinds of rocks through it. So all those rocks get underneath the wire, and they just prevent it from going all the way to the bottom. That's the experience that we have. I don't care what anybody else says. We see it all the time. Now you can put what they call slab bolsters under here. You can buy 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and 2 inch. Put them underneath too. And those do help keep the wire up also. Just that wire that's so flimsy that you'd have to buy hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of those slab bolsters in order to keep it all of it up perfectly even throughout the concrete. And some jobs like this size, we just don't feel the cost is really worth that. Just pulling it up like we do, we've had really good luck with just doing it that way. So that's the way we do it. Now another thing is, we always use water reducer in the concrete too. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that we use water reducer, which allows, it's a chemical they put in the concrete when they batch the concrete out. It allows us to pour the concrete at a lot looser slump than normal. Like this is around a 6.5, 7 slump, without having to add water to the concrete to get it up that loose. So the water reducer does that for us. Just makes our job a heck of a lot easier when we're pouring concrete, when we're pulling it around, when we're screeding it, when we're bull floating it. Just makes things go a lot faster, especially when there's only 3 of us like there is today on this one. So we decided to start right in the middle of this and work our way from the middle to one end, and then we'll get these concrete trucks around to this other end, as you'll see a little bit later in the video, because we only had access to both ends. We didn't have access to either one of the sides on this, which made it a little more difficult, but not too bad. We didn't want to have to spend $1,500 for a pump truck because we could reach each end, and we just thought the $1,500 was an expense that the homeowner didn't really need. It's not a ton more work for us pulling the concrete around, as you'll see in the video. It's a little bit slower, but it's not that big a deal. Not a $1,500 deal, at least not to us. You see, we're trying to keep that wire from sliding too close to the forms. That's one good thing about tying it together. It doesn't usually tend to want to slide if it's all tied together. All those rows across there, we got 1, 2, 3, 6 rows of wire across there. So once you get concrete on it and they're all tied together, it's gonna not want to move. We decided not to tie it and just make sure we were real careful as we poured, not to let it move around too much and touch the forms. So now here's where it comes a little bit easier. You know, we can pour right out of the chute like this. We can kind of control how fast the concrete comes out of the truck, how fast I move the chute. And then as I'm holding the chute with one hand, I'm pulling the wire with the other hand. And Darren and Luke, they're pretty good about spreading it around, getting it right to grade or really close to grade just by using their eye like this. And then I do have the laser set up. You can't see it in the video here, but I got a laser set up. You'll see me use that in a minute. And I got to shoot some wet pads in here. So I'm going to, in between each drain, I will shoot a pad that's the same height as the top of the form, which is going to be about an inch or so higher than what the floor drains are set at. So we'll have a high point in between each drain, and then, you know, everything's going to slope really nice from the outside edge to the drain, and then from in between each drain, it'll slope down to each drain. So there's no low spots here other than where the drains are. Now the homeowner did pretty much all the earthwork prep here. He dug it all out with his tractor. Like I said, he did his own footing. He did the ICF forms. They were delivered right here. He set them up, he poured them, and then he backfilled the inside and the outside using his tractor, compacted it really good. He actually did a pretty good job. You know, a lot better than a lot of the excavators we work behind these days, it seems like. Now, our whole game plan here right now is just to get this truck dumped out. This, you know, whatever he's got, I think he's got like 10.5 yards on. Just get him dumped out, get him out of the way so the second one can start mixing up and get back here in place. And while the second one's doing that, you're going to see us screed this down and just how we screed it with floor drains and all that. While the second one's getting ready, then the third one's going to pull in, and, you know, I can see the second one coming up the driveway right now. So he'll get himself turned around. We almost got this guy dumped out. See, Luke grabbed a shovel, scraped a chute down. So it doesn't take very long to dump out 10.5 yards when it's 6 inches thick. You know, that's going to cover about 500 square feet, roughly, maybe a little bit more than 500 square feet at 6 inches. So that's basically the size of, you know, 24 by 23 garage, 24 by 22 garage. That's 6 inches. Now here's where I'm using the laser. So I got my receiver on my grade stick. We call it a grade stick. That's got like a ruler on it with numbers. And I set that receiver right to the top of the forms. And then I'm shooting a pad. That pad I just shot is the exact same height. And my laser tells me that. So then I can mark it. Can tell Luke and Darren that, hey, this is good, it's at grade, you can use it to strike off from. And you can see Luke's using like a 7-foot screed, so from the high point where the pad is down to the drain, that grade pad slopes. So I'm on your left here on the outside, Darren's by the drain, and he's actually starting at the drain, the lowest part of the floor, he's now screeding uphill about an inch. And then he gets to that high point where the pad was, and then he starts screeding back downhill to the other drain. And that's how we slope a floor like this, with you know, using a 14-foot screed. Same thing on this side. That's how we get all really good slope. And then when we go to power trowel that, you can kind of feel it in the power trowel as you trowel the floor. You can also see it in the bowl float here. You know, if you've got a good eye for it, you can see it. On the video, it's a little hard to see, but when you're right there in person, you can see how the slab slopes. You can see how easy that bowl floats though, using that water reducer. Just down and back and I'm done. That really helps speed things up versus having to go back and forth the same area over and over again. So Darren and Luke, they looked at the slump when they first told the driver, and they were like, yeah, it needs about probably a little bit more. So you can add a little bit of water when they show up on site, because there's not much water in the mix as it is when they start. When they get batched out and they leave the concrete plant, you know, they're leaving with maybe a 2 or 3 or 4 inch slump roughly. So there's not a lot of water in there with that water reducer. And then when they show up on site, you know, you tell them, hey, you know, we want about a 6.5 slump. The guy adds a little bit of water. You take a look at it. It's not quite where you want it. You tell them, just give it 5 or 10 more. So basically you've added about 20 gallons of water on site, and you're right up to the slump you want, like we are right here. We're just trying to get that end filled in pretty much without getting too much there, because we get too much there now, we got to shovel it outside because of the way we started. And then we'll have to move this second guy over to this far end here and get him dumped out so the third guy can get in place. You can see I got that laser stick with me. I'm just checking things as I go. I like to double check everything, make sure everything's perfect, nothing moved. The homeowner wanted some double row of rebar right in front of where his garage doors were going. He had the rebar already on site. I don't know where he got it, but he had some there already. It was like number 5 rebar. So we just wet set it down, poked it down a couple inches, mag floated the surface, and now we got it all ready to go. And that's as easy as it is to screed. You know, Darren, Luke, and I, we've been screeding concrete a long time, well over 30 years. So we kind of make it look easy, and to us it actually is easy with the right guy raking behind you and then having the right slump. Like, that's not very hard once you know what to do. And then being able to slope it like that, even at a 6-inch slump, it holds its slope really good. Nothing sags when even at that slump. And that's how we get a bay, like a garage bay, sloped to a center drain. That's really nice, where there's no low spots, there's no dips. There's not going to be any puddles in that thing. And now we're just checking right in front of the garage doors. We want to make sure that's nice and flat with no humps, no dips right there, and it's perfect. Then we can get the bowl floating. And here we are moving the second truck out back here to get him emptied out. It was kind of tight. There was one little like login road there that the guy uses. You can see he cuts a little bit of wood on it by himself. But for a concrete truck, it was a little bit tight. And we're right at the 25-foot mark. You can see we put a few braces on our forms just to make sure nothing moved. We also got a string. We ran a string across top of the form. We're checking that string as we're pouring, as we're magging floating the surface out, making sure everything stays nice and straight. So we looked at that slump. This is what we do. We look at the slump when he first gets there, and we're like, you know, we know with that water reducer what we can pour for a slump. So the first time we looked at it, I don't know, we just thought it might need another 5 gallons, so we had him add another 5 gallons, and this is what it comes out looking like right here. If you tell him you want a 6 or 6.5 slump, that's what it looks like. And that stuff right there, that's a good floor slump for moving around. You can see how we can rake it around, how we can screed it. And now we're going right back across that first truck. Remember, this is the second truck. So we're going right down where we stopped that first truck, making sure we're getting off that joint before it starts setting up too fast. That's just going to make our life a little bit easier when we go to finish the concrete, when we go to power trowel it. Now, if you want to learn more about concrete, how to pour concrete, how to finish concrete, I've got my training in the concrete underground. That's also in the show more section of the video below the notes of the video. You'll see the concrete underground. So you just check that out. I got all kinds of training videos in there if you want to learn how to do concrete like we do. There's from slabs in there to floors to power troweling to stamp concrete to concrete repair to concrete stairs in there. There's all kinds of different things about concrete I teach you in there. So for 3 guys pouring a 50 by 30 6-inch slab, I mean that's quite a bit of concrete to move around. And the thing about us, the way we do concrete, is we try to pour concrete every single day, pretty much in the from, let's say, April, because we live in Maine. So April, we can start getting concrete on some of these side roads. They do post our roads for weight in the winter. Well, actually in the spring when things start unthawing. So a big heavy truck like this is about 80,000 pounds when it's full. They can't even drive on a lot of these side roads in Maine because they're posted for weight. The frost is coming out, the roads get a little soft. They don't want these big heavy trucks ruining the road. So they typically can't get on the roads until all the frost has come out of the ground, everything's dried up really good. And sometimes that might not be till May 1st. So generally, things start getting busy in April around here. But sometimes we can't get on the road to even get to the job, unless it's on a state road or something like that. But the town roads don't usually let us on them until about May 1st. So starting May 1st, from May usually till around December 1st, things are quite busy for us. Like every day, except for most Saturdays and Sundays, we're pouring concrete every day. We try to have something scheduled for every day. And most of the year that happens. Now there'll be some days we'll just schedule because we got a big job and there's a lot of form work that needs to be done, a lot of prep work, and we might schedule a day just to do the prep work. But typically we like to get something poured and we'll leave either 1 or 2 guys here. Like Luke and Darren can finish something like this pretty easily on their own, which allows me to go do some prep work on something else. And then usually in the summer, like when school gets out, we got a school teacher that works for us full-time in the summer, so we got him for about 10 weeks. That helps speed things up a little bit, helps us be able to do a little bit more. And a lot of times we'll even have another person, whether we hire somebody full-time or we have a part-timer for summer. So that'll get us up to 5, sometimes even 6 sometimes in the summer is nice. And that kind of doubles what we can do normally. So we try to squeeze in almost 12 months of work in about 8.5 to 9 months, because usually towards the middle of December, all through January, and most all through February here, it's just too brutally cold to do much outside, if anything, really. And definitely it's hard to make money even if you do something. And then come April, things start changing here. In April, you'll get some days up in the 40s where you could do something. If all the conditions are right, you could do something outside. But there's not many of those days in March either. We still get some big snowstorms in March. So you can see we're coming off that joint from the first truck with the second truck. It wasn't too bad. Things aren't setting up too fast on us yet, even though it's pretty warm out here today. We'll kind of strike off the joint like right there, and if we feel like it just doesn't look right or something looks funny, then we'll mag that out. Kind of what Luke's doing right there. We'll just mag it really flat, make it look really nice. And then the bow float usually takes care of the rest. All depends on how fast that concrete's setting up. Today the concrete trucks had about a 20-ish minute ride to the job, so the concrete wasn't in the drum too long. If it's in there for 30, 40, 50 minutes, sometimes riding to a job, that concrete starts setting up good on you. Even before you even get it all down like this, you can feel it setting up from the previous truck. There, we're a good 3/4 of the way done now. Just getting down to where that last floor drain is. So what do you guys think about these ICF forms? I mean, the code in this town kind of calls for a slab to have 16 to 18 inch thick edges. So rather than just dig that thicker around the edge in the dirt and form with, you know, using a 2x12 and then stacking a 2x6 on top of it, rather than do it that way with a slab, the homeowner just wanted to do it this way. Now let me know what you guys think. Is this something you would do? Do you like doing it this way, would you rather do like the traditional way of doing what we call a concrete slab with thickened edges, or a grade beam around the edges? You don't need, even if this isn't heated, you don't need to get below the frost line in something like this if you use good gravel. If you, like, he got the slab up pretty high here for a reason. He's going to grade everything up to this, so all the exterior landscaping afterwards will be sloping away from the slab, so water won't be getting fetched up around the outside perimeter of the slab. It's all going to slope away. You probably even put drainage here as he goes to backfill the rest of this. That's really the key to keep things from freezing here from heaving, frost heaving in the winter here in Maine, is you can't let moisture collect late fall during the winter, and then even early spring. You can't let moisture collect around the slab where it's going to freeze and thaw. That's where you get into trouble with stuff heaving on you. So we're starting to feel the effects of the concrete setting up a little bit. We've been here, we're probably at about an hour, a little over an hour here now doing this. And that third truck, by the time he got batched out from the concrete plant, drove to the job, got here, sitting waiting for us. That concrete's been sitting in there 30 to 45 minutes. And, you can tell, you can feel it on your boots. But it's still workable. It just feels a little bit stiffer here as we go. Now, that's a 14-foot screed we're using. It's a magnesium screed. It's really straight, really true. Yeah, you can see how that looks. Now I'm having to go back and forth a little bit more now than when I first started. If you remember, that's what it is when the concrete starts setting up on you a little bit. You may have to go 2 or 3 times over it to get it really smooth. Got a little bit of shade there. You can tell the sun's still coming up. It's down pretty low. So this is probably 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's not too early yet. Luke's mag floating them bull float marks out. Alright, that'll do for now. We got probably an hour before we gotta start finishing, so we'll check back with you in about an hour.